There's a guy in D.C. Who, when I was living there, took me out. I didn't let him buy lunch, and he didn't let me buy. So at least there was that bit of professionalism. And he was a young guy getting a start in journalism. And as I recall, he was working at a obviously liberal publication with, I believe, some ties to George Soros. So we sat down and had this discussion, and I was just curious, like, what does he think he's going to get from me? This is when I was the chief digital strategist at the RNC. And he said he just wanted to develop a friendship, and maybe I could provide him background on some stuff. And I told him, number one, you work for a liberal publication, so I'm not going to be providing you background on anything. Number two, I'm not going to tell secrets on the committee. And number three, I'm not going to be anybody's source. And he said, well, I can understand the second two, but the first two really hurts my feelings, that you would think that I'm a liberal, therefore I'm not going to provide you fair coverage. You don't know that I'm a liberal. I said, I didn't say you were. I said, you work for one. So he is now apparently with the Bulwark. And he had a conversation about the alleged of the insurance company CEO. And the conversation is everything that is wrong with the Mockingbird medium in one way. They are so free to speak of a certain idol. And they talk about Trump land being cultish. And look, let's be fair. There are people who believe that President Trump is the savior of mankind. That there are people who believe that Donald Trump will save the world. Not God through Donald Trump. There's a huge difference. Huge. People exist who cannot hear a criticism of Donald Trump. For instance, his Surgeon General nominee has no business anywhere near the levers of power. Some of his other nominees are great. She doesn't have any business there. Kristi Noem doesn't have any business running Homeland Security. She sold out her home state to South Korea and Chinese Communist Party types. She's a threat to the country. She'll sell out her state, she'll sell out a country. Those are fair criticisms. But there are people in Trump land who can't stand to see President Trump criticized. So the left says we've made an idol of him, or it's a cult. The left does have many idols. One of them is race, but there's one that trumps all of them. And it comes through in this conversation about, we'll talk about that. And then Lizzie Warren has her hot take on this alleged. And hers says so much about January 6th and pro-life protesters. It does. I'll share this with you in a second. We get to do this right here because of friendships. Well, it didn't start as a friendship, but right now we work with a company, Bioptimizers. This is now going on 4 years, and I've developed a friendship with one of the owners, Wade. He just had his first child. Now, he did this, waited later in life, and he called himself, a straggler, a slow starter, kind of a joke, but they just had their first baby, and the baby's voracious with food. Imagine that. Wade was a world champ bodybuilder as a vegetarian, all-natural class, super, super hard to do. Wonder where that baby got that appetite. So he was eating a lot and eating a lot and eating a lot and not digesting well. So what does Wade do? He reaches into his products from Bioptimizers, Masszymes and P3OM, and he gives it to the little baby. Yes, nutritional supplements for a baby, obviously in small doses. That should say something to you about his trust in his own company. Right now, during the holidays, he's suggesting something for people who get stressed out. It's their magnesium breakthrough product, 7 forms of all organic magnesium, nothing like you'll find in the China March, which is fake magnesium, and it helps control stress hormones. So if you want to de-stress during the holidays, go to bioptimizers.com/Todd. Use promo code Todd to get an extra 10% off magnesium breakthrough. That's bioptimizers.com/Todd. Make sure to use promo code Todd. This is a conversation. Tim Miller's in this. He is at the Bulwark, of course, a Never Trump organization started specifically to be that. They're talking about the alleged murder of the insurance company CEO.
But this suspected, there's a lot to unpack here. Tim, what are your first impressions?
There's a lot to unpack here, including his six-pack would be among the things you need to unpack.
Got that? We need to unpack his six-pack. And so they show a picture of the alleged shirt off. Yep, he's yoked. Yep. He's got a six-pack. Yep. It's a full ab set. And this is where this conversation goes. Have you spotted the idol?
Did post yes. Yeah.
This is a very attractive man, and there are a lot of texts about that. So I have a few more things to say about that at the very end, but I knew that that's probably what people are coming here to hear my thoughts on. So
that's what people are coming to hear. Did you spot the idol?
You got to wait till the end to hear my additional thoughts on
Good that you did not bury the lead here. It's blowing up on the gay group chats.
The gay group chats are on fire right now.
Did you spot the idol?
Any other closing thoughts on this?
Because we got to go back to his looks.
Go back.
I've received several texts from people trying to get me to admit that I am attracted to the shooter, and I do, and I have to just say, not exactly my type. I mean, objectively handsome.
I think once you kill someone,
not exactly my type. Yeah. I like in that category. Kind of the Boston Marathon bomber was kind of a little bit more.
Hold on now. You think it's bad yet? Hold on. Did you spot the idol? They're talking about a guy who probably went nuts and probably maybe because of this back injury. They could be talking about his privilege. He comes from a privileged background, apparently a rich family. They could be talking about his private schooling. And maybe they spend a lot of time on that. But their beginning and ending is to an idol called sex. Now listen to them talk about the Boston bomber. And if you don't remember, these are people who used pressure cooker bombs to murder, well, civilians just at the Boston Marathon. I think kids were involved in that.
Do you remember the Rolling Stone cover of that guy?
Do I? Oh, do I remember that cover?
Not an appropriate cover.
Some people were very upset about the cover, not me.
They made him look like a young Bob Dylan. It was nuts.
Much handsomer than a young Bob Dylan. So anyway, he's still in jail as he should be. But not exactly my type. But other people disagree, and I have some pretty disgusting things in my inbox.
You just said some pretty disgusting things. So much about the left focuses on an idol called getting some strange. Look, can we be blunt with each other? Satan has a very limited bag of tricks. He can depress, he can distort, he can distract. And one of the easiest ones is sex because it's easy. Particularly for the male portion of the species, it's easy. And when your brain gets into sex mode, and can we just be absolutely blunt with one another? It changes. And I think we can all be adults and admit it changes. Some endorphins take over, some hormones take over, and you can make some stupid decisions. So the more time you spend in sex land, the more time you're focused on it, the more important it becomes. And the more difficult it is to not think of it. And in a soaked culture, and these guys are of the age to be in that culture of, it makes sense that it becomes a further idol. An idol doesn't have to be something you actively worship. It's something that keeps you apart from God. So that's one horrible hot take on this. They should be deeply embarrassed that they do this. And someone said, hey, maybe the money makes it worthwhile for these guys. Is that it, the money? Lizzie Warren, who made a portion of her wealth by buying homes that had been foreclosed upon. So obviously buying homes out from under desperate people. No one wants their home foreclosed. And then taking those homes and flipping them, made her money in the stock market, lied about being a Native American. She spoke about the alleged of the insurance company's CEO.
We've been talking a lot about this Luigi Mangione, the case about the United Healthcare CEO. People are very angry at United Healthcare, I think for good reason, denying care and the whole system. And we were just talking in the previous block, CEO is not the way you change. You have to regulate them, right? And so we've got attempts to try to rein in some of these big businesses. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was your creation. The Trump administration wants to get rid of it. That is like protecting people from like credit card fraud. Yeah. What happens if that goes away?
So look, terrible for individuals, but stop and think overall about the social contract. Part of the deal in how we've kept this democracy, this economy, this country on a fairly steady path for more than 200 years has been that those at the top pay a little more in taxes, are a little less rich than they otherwise might be, and everybody else at least gets a chance.
Yeah.
And what happens when you turn this into the billionaires run it all is they get the opportunity to squeeze every last penny.
Yeah.
And look, we'll say it over and over. Violence is never the answer. This guy gets a trial who's allegedly killed the CEO of United Health. But you can only push people so far. And then they start to take matters into their own hands.
Yeah.
You can only push people so far, and then they take matters into their own hands. There were people who felt pushed on January 6th. They felt an election had been rigged. Those were their feelings. I believe, well, I know it was rigged. My personal belief, this is a personal belief, is it was stolen. Many of those people, the majority of them who went to Washington, D.C., did nothing wrong. They'd been pushed only so far, but you never heard Lizzie Warren say, well, let's understand something. You could only push people so far. We said you had to stay home. You had to mail in your ballots. We said the drop boxes are okay. We said don't worry about the counting. It's fine. Don't worry about signatures. Don't worry about voter ID. We don't need voter ID. Don't worry that we're counting ballots past the time of the election. Don't worry about any of that. Some people were pushed too far. But to further unpack, that's no focus of hers. Of course, she excludes the Black Lives Matter Incorporated Antifa rioters because they were pushed too far. But you can't push so-called white America far enough. But in her further conversation, she plays the same silly, stupid budgetary game that by taxing the supposedly rich, and there are very rich people in the country, like the CEO of United Healthcare was very rich, like taxing them gives other people a chance. No, it doesn't. And insurance is purposely regulated. They wrote Obamacare to regulate themselves to make it difficult for startups. There's a reason why MediShare, which is, by the way, not a Christian organization in any way, shape, matter, idea, faction, or form, and I'll be talking about that. They're not. There's a reason they can't call themselves insurance. Why? Because companies like United Healthcare said that doesn't get to be insurance. If regulating insurance was going to open things up and to make things more fair in insurance land, that would have already happened. How about this? How about no longer require it? How about change the rules so you can open a hospital and call it a hospital if you don't take insurance? You can't do that right now because of Medicare and Medicaid. So the two hot takes on the say this. In the case of Lizzie Warren, it's understandable that he went to go take the life of the CEO, but it's not understandable that people rioted or just protested on J6. And with the Bulwark people, it's the obvious idol. For the left, just as for Satan, bodily pleasure is the idol in the form of sexuality. It's never, ever healthy.